Hello, and welcome to Chaotic Insights, where I break down the TV show Chaotic. And today we'll be talking about Season 2, Episode 3, The Floundering Father. So grab a snack, start your laundry, and we'll dive right in. Episode summary: Tom is playing a match against a Danian player in the Drome. He goes to compliment his opponent, and it's a child named Buzz Jr. And his father, Buzz Sr., tries to coach his son by yelling at him, and Tom ends up winning the match. At the end of the match, Buzz Sr. hounds Buzz Jr. for losing the match, and our group of heroes stand up for Buzz Jr., and they want Buzz Sr. to put his money where his mouth is, and they challenge Buzz Sr. to a Drome match, and Buzz can pick anyone he wants to battle out of the four. Buzz Sr. picks Kaz for the battle, and this is his first ever Drome match. So Kaz ends up winning the match, but through the journey, Buzz Sr. has a change of heart inspired by his son. And that's the episode we're working with. So, analysis. The premise of this episode is kind of a play on like our big match format, and it's kind of a twist of like what happens when the commentary becomes too much. Like the big match format is the plot of the episode is the big match, and then we have like Sarah and Peyton or Clay and Christella in the audience commentating on the match to help us like propel the plot forward or to understand further. And we kind of get that, like we get the end of an episode, as if the big match was Buzz Jr. and Tom, but Buzz Sr., his commentating has just gone out off the deep end. It's just too much. And that idea is the spark for this episode. It's like the inciting incident is big match gone too far, commentator commentating too much, too loud, too aggressive, and like in a negative way. There's a way to cheer and have it be fun, and there's a way to cheer and have it be not fun. And, Buzz Sr., he was not being fun. So, with that premise in mind, we have a character whose commentary becomes too much, and we have this like father son dynamic to play off of. Right? It's a father son dynamic, but it's also like a coach player dynamic. And that's really what the heart of this episode is, the Buzz Sr. and the Buzz Jr. This isn't like a Tom, Kaz, Peyton, or Sarah episode. This is really an episode for the Buzzes, if you will. And so let's dive into these characters. Buzz Sr. is, at least at the beginning of the episode, hyper controllive. He's a perfectionist. He's kind of an authoritarian parent, or like a helicopter parent who's just like too involved and doesn't give his son room to breathe. And he's loud and he's passionate and he's angry and he's anxious and he's overconfident and he's rude and he's dismissive. And, this is kind of the setup is, this father who's controlling and overconfident and like is exerting power rather than guidance. Like even his like naming convention, Buzz Sr., Buzz Jr., kind of reflects this. Because, all right, having a son named after you, having a junior, not inherently bad or like self-centered, but like in narrative media, like we are analyzing right now, he named his son after himself, which also like plays into the self-centered nature of the character, right? There's no other names in the world to make him a unique individual. The expectation of Buzz Sr. is that Buzz Jr. is like a direct copy of him, aggressive and would play the game that he would play, Buzz Sr., that is. And so those are just some attributes. And the backstory that we're given is, he was a good online player who decided to give up playing in the Drome because he wanted to be Buzz Jr.'s coach once he got to Chaotic, right? He didn't want to play in the Dromes. He was a good enough player that he got to the real Chaotic, but then was like, I don't want to do that. And so he decided to become Buzz Jr.'s coach instead. And was that a two-person decision? It seems like not necessarily. It seems like that was Buzz Sr.'s decision, and Buzz Jr. went along with it because, power dynamics and like that's his son. And so maybe, like, why would he do this? Maybe he was intimidated to play as a creature in the Drome, or somehow he was put off by the experience. There was something about playing in a drone match that he was hesitant about. And like so far, this is the only time that we've seen Buzz like show hesitancy, right? With his son, he's very firm and direct and jumping on those opportunities versus him playing a chaotic battle, Buzz Sr., he didn't want to do that. And so he's kind of lost this identity as a player because he's solely a coach. And that's kind of the summation of what we get about Buzz Sr., right? He he's not a player, he's a coach. And so he's kind of lost touch with what it's like to be in a drome because he's never done it. Now, Buzz Sr. is the father, and on the flip side of that is Buzz Jr., the son. And they're kind of foils to each other. They're both in this like parent-son dynamic, and they're both in this like coach-player dynamic, right? But on the flip side of Buzz Sr., Buzz Jr. is cool and nice and supportive and kind of like all around pleasant to be around. And he's smart and a good player, right? Tom compliments him on that was a tough match. Like he was he put up a good fight to Tom. And the thing about Buzz Jr. is he holds duality, right? He's in this dynamic, but he also, he's being trampled over to some extent, but he also holds so much love for his dad, right? He has all this information that Buzz Sr. is giving him, but he also has all the learned information of being a player in the drome, and he uses both of those to his advantage. Buzz Sr. is feeding him all of this like technical or like online gameplay strategy, and Buzz Jr. has the learned experience of being a player in the drome and what strategies can be there. So he's really like a holistic player in both strategic in the drome and strategic through the cards. And at the end of this episode, right, they go, let's go give each other pointers because Buzz Jr. has information that Buzz Sr. doesn't have. And that's what he's learned through the drome. And that's like Buzz Sr.'s blind spot because he's never done it before. And so like those are our two characters, and it's interesting to see them go on this journey because the theme of this episode is it's a game, have fun. Like that's the pretty explicit lesson. And this episode leans into the athletic competition of Chaotic, and the coach archetype, is very present in sports media. And I think it's smart that they lean into the athleticism and the competition aspect of the athletic competition that is Chaotic in this episode while playing with like the sports coach archetype, right? Because there's this cliche that's like, that's not my dream dad, it's yours. And they kind of play into that of they have this like over controlling coach figure who's pushing his wishes onto his son. But like the flip of that is it's not it's both of their dreams. They're both here to have fun. This is their passion. Like they don't have to do this if they don't want to. And Buzz Sr. has lost sight of that this is for fun, this is an extracurricular, this is a hobby. And the point of doing an extracurricular or doing a hobby is to, sure, learn skills, but also to enjoy your life and to have fun. And the conflict of the overcompetitive coach who's trying to micromanage his son with the son who enjoys playing the game and just wants to have fun, that's the point of conflict. And so with this conflict and dynamic where Buzz has lost sight of, this is for fun, and Buzz like re-infusing that into him, that ends up being Buzz is really our dynamic character of the episode, Buzz Sr. that is, because he's the one who goes through a change. He goes from being dismissive to understanding. He goes from talking over his son to stopping, taking a moment, and listening fully. Especially like right when he's about to lose, he doesn't have any more tips or tricks left in him. That's when he turns to his son. And he gets the advice of, use your hive ability. And so there is technical advice there, but also have fun. Because if you're too narrow-sighted on winning, you lose the greater picture. And then that ending of we'll give each other pointers in the beta drum acknowledges that the power dynamic has leveled more to like a respect dynamic. And I think there is an opportunity in this episode to acknowledge the concept of respect. Like, there's that post that's like, some people think respect is treating a person like a person, and some people think it means treating people like authority. And that's Buzz Jr. is able to unravel his dad's belief in the authority definition throughout this episode into treating him like a person. And there is still an inherent power dynamic there because it's father-son, but they level out the authoritarian dynamic to a respect dynamic of, sure, he's the coach, but now they're no longer coach and player, they're just two players. And so they've leveled from, treat me like I'm in charge to we both have knowledge that's useful and acceptable. And isn't that interesting that we kind of take this pause, right? We're not doing a Param story. This isn't, a Maxor focused episode. And we're not doing a Peyton, Kaz, Sarah, Tom focused episode. We take this departure from our core group to like these two kind of one-off characters. I would argue this episode is still unique and fulfilling and interesting, even though our protagonists are put into this like supporting place. But really, the role of our characters in this situation is to get the ball rolling, right? We have this exciting incident of Buzz Seniors doing too much and it's annoying our people, and they think that's unfair and unjust, and we should do something about it because as we know, the characteristics of our main characters are they're quick to stand up for what's right. And so we have a real John Quinones, what would you do situation here. Like, this episode is kind of a John Quinones, what would you do, right? Buzz Sr. is being loud and overly critical of his son, and it's like right next to our heroes. And so, what would you do? A parent is not just parenting their child, they're actively like being rude and mean to them. Would you stand up for that child or would you like let it happen? Even if he didn't win, he still like did really good in the match, especially from Tom's perspective. And, sometimes you need to take a breath and like feel the emotion of the match. You can go back and analyze the match later when you've taken a breath and you've taken the emotion that you felt at the end of the match, and then you can have dedicated time to, go over the tapes and talk strategy. But, Buzz Sr. needed to figure out that he just needed to take a breath. Now it's not the time to talk strategy. And so our group of heroes stand up and, they do something about it. On to lore. While we're talking about Buzz Sr., I think it's interesting to bring up how he is a chaotic coach without ever being a chaotic drone player at chaotic. And that's a new concept that's being introduced in this episode. And so let's talk about it. It just raises questions for me like, how has he never played in a drum match? Is he forfeiting all of his scheduled matches, or did he like make a deal with the code masters or the people in charge to not schedule him matches anymore because that's not what he wants to do in this location? And what made them okay with that? Like, once you get in, is he like taking somebody else's spot? Probably not, because, it seems like there's plenty of room at Chaotic for everybody. How did he reach the arrangement that he has? If he forfeits every match, that seems like he wouldn't be allowed at Chaotic anymore. So he must have some arrangement of, I'm just going to be here and I'm going to be a coach. So I wonder if there's other people floating around Chaotic who aren't specifically Drome match players, if they have other roles in this community. And one thing about the match with Buzz Jr. and Buzz Sr. is we do get a good display of Danians and Danian locations in this episode, like the reservoir, like the Queen's Gate, and all of these Danian players, what a water Danian is. We get a good display of that in their match. While we're talking about lore, I'm not going to point out every single Danian that was like introduced in this episode, but I think it's worth noting that, we do finally show some love for Danians in the drums. In season one, we didn't get a lot of that, but like right off the bat here in season two, we're getting some Danian highlighted episodes. Now, really what I think is the big piece of lore in this episode is Buzz Sr. and Buzz Jr. themselves. and what they mean for representation in the series. So our protagonists are high schoolers, like Tom, Kaz, Peyton, Sarah. They are probably what, 16 to 18? They're high schoolers. And Buzz Jr. is probably what, 12 to 14? He's probably an older middle schooler. And Buzz Sr., an adult, probably 40s, 50s. With the presentation so far, we've kind of gotten the idea that everybody's in a similar age range. Like, there's a lot of young people here. It's, you know, older high school, maybe young adults is kind of the demographic that's mainly represented in Chaotic, specifically like in the drones and adventuring around. But this episode, if we look at our identity wheel, really zones in on the concept of age, and we get age diversity here. Buzz is a younger kid. He's still competent and has the ability to be a good online player, and so then he can make his way to being a good player in actual Chaotic. And then we have his dad, who is older and is probably the oldest human character we've seen in the series thus far. And so I think it really broadens the representation range of like this game isn't specifically just for high schoolers. It's for anybody who can play. If you're younger, if you're older, you can have fun and be good at this game. And I think that representation in the TV show is important for inclusivity reasons, right? If you watch the TV show and you think, man, this is just for, 18-year-olds, your high schoolers or young adults, you might not feel welcome in the space, but like an episode like this is intentional in the fact that they're including a younger kid, that they're including an older adult, and that both of these people are not just included in the space, but welcomed, right? At the end of the episode, Buzz Sr. has a change of heart and decides to become a drone player. And Buzz Jr. is good at this, and he's welcomed, and, Tom finds the match interesting and engaging. And there's just a piece to narrative media that I think we need to be conscious about who we're representing and what does that mean for the audience. And I think this episode does a good job of that, right? Age is a demographic indicator that's often overlooked. So I think being intentional about including a younger player and an older player is good. It makes sense and it broadens the audience who would want to engage in chaotic material. On to fun facts and other notes. In this episode, they battle in the green drone, and they give it a name. It's the Orindrome, which means we canonically get the last name of our seven Codemasters: Krellin, Hotek, Amdin, Orin, Tyrsis, Imthor, and Churl. We got all seven canonically in the series, and we know that Orin is the green one. So let's jot that down in our little chart. On the menu for today, we have some ice cream sundaes, and I would say my favorite joke of the episode is when, you know, they're like, "Didn't you know that?" And somebody says, like, "I knew that, but I forgot that I remember that I knew it." Or whatever that quote is. I thought that was funny. Into some animation changes that I noticed, right? The code bubble void is now black with a blue glow instead of just being like solid blue. Also, the Gothos Tower windows have been corrected to look like the card with red stained glass instead of like that eerie green. The final thing I want to talk about in fun facts and other notes is I think we have a discrepancy here with Stelgar. So Kaz switches out Zor for Stelgar when they're in like the Danian reservoir, and Sarah says, like, good, because this creature is much more suited for this environment. And I would say that's true. Like, Stelgar is much better at being an aquatic creature. But here's the thing: Stelgar is supposed to shrink in water and grow in sunlight. And there is no sunlight in the Danian reservoirs, right? Because it's underground, it's beneath Mount Pillar. And here's the thing: Stelgar should be shrinking, but he's not. He stays big like the whole time, even when he like drinks up all that water and shoots it at the Danian. Like the water should be making him less powerful. He's more suited for traversing the terrain in an aquatic setting, but I think we have this continuity error of like Stelgar would be more powerful here. No, like that implication is wrong. He's better for like existing in an aquatic environment, but he's not a more well-suited creature for battling there. He should be getting tiny, and his attacks should be getting less powerful. That's all I have for lore. I really think season two so far has been hit after hit, right? Episode one with the eco terrorists, that's really interesting and gives us a lot of lore. The last episode with Rasnus is really interesting and gives us a lot of lore. And this episode is interesting and engaging and feels inclusive to a broader range of age demographics. So my final thoughts on this episode are I feel like there's so much to say about this episode and analyzing the parent-child dynamic, but I don't really know the best way to get into that. But if you have any insight or analysis of this episode, I would love to hear it and see what you have to say. I think this is like another great episode. It's memorable. It has a good message of, being overly competitive can lead to your downfall. And you got to remember to have fun. Because at the end of the day, this is entertainment. It's a game, it's an extracurricular, it's a hobby, and it's fun. You're supposed to be having fun. And even like watching the TV show, it's a TV show. It's entertainment. It's supposed to be fun. And this episode is just that. It's fun. So, with that, if you have anything I missed, let me know. And I'll see you next time. Bye.